All these things that I have been talking about in the last few videos, the circle drill with no brakes, the practicing no brake drill, they all lead to a certain point to where you start to realize things you're doing on the bike. So in one of my previous videos, I mentioned hand pressure. So in this video, I'm gonna break down when you start doing corners without using the brakes to navigate your way through the corner, how you realize how you use hand pressure. And this was a big eye opener for me. It made turning really easy, actually. You'll start to realize how you can put downward pressure and inward pressure in different types of corners. And I'm gonna break the two different ways you can manipulate the inside handlebar to get your bike to turn. And all of us have had that time we come into a rut and we ride out. So what do? We start grabbing the brakes to get through the rut. Well, what if instead of grabbing the brakes, you use the pressure on the handlebars to get the bike to either lean or turn a tighter radius? And you can use this. I use it all the time when I ride. If I come into the corner and I feel like I'm gonna ride out, I use one of two things to do a certain thing to the bike. So pay attention to this video, and I'm gonna show a couple videos and two different types of corners and the different ways you would either wanna manipulate the bars to make your bike lean or to make it turn a tighter radius. All right, so we'll get into the video. Okay, so in these two corners, what you have is you have a long flowing rut, and the dirt here is a lot tackier than my previous video when I was doing it in the sandier dirt. So what I really don't want to do here is I'm not trying to make a directions change. I'm not trying to tighten the radius of my corner. What I'm trying to do is get more lean. And in order to get more lean, you can see here when I slow it down, so as I come in, I'm gonna come into the corner and I briefly stand up. I always like standing up for my braking. I think the bike's more stable when you stand up. And here I'm gonna sit, I'm pretty neutral, but then you can tell right when I get past the cone, you can see there's a pitch there. I'm pitching the bike down with my inside hand. And what I'm doing is with my last two fingers on my inside hand, right below that on the palm, I'm putting pressure downward almost towards the ground. And I'm gonna do it again here in the next corner. Right there, I'm pitching it down towards the ground. This one, the second corner, the tighter corner, it's not as obvious. But later I'll break it down in some pictures and I'll explain step by step how I'm doing that through the corner and getting more lean out of the corner. All right, so the second corner here, this is one I've used before. And what I'm trying to do is when I come in here, now here is where I need to turn a tighter radius. It's not tacky dirt, it's not wanting to stand my bike up, but I'm trying to turn a tighter radius here. And so what I do, you can see right there, the front end turns. And so with the same area of my palm, what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling inward towards my thigh to get a tighter turning radius. All right, so here we're gonna break down the pictures of the tacky dirt and what I'm doing. Okay, so in this first picture, what I'm doing is I'm done braking, I'm starting to initiate my corner, and I'm gonna sit pretty neutral with the bike. And what happens in tacky long ruts like this is you're getting so much traction that at some point your bike is gonna wanna grab a lot of traction and send you straight. I mean, that's what a dirt bike's meant to do, is send you straight. So the input from your body is what needs to make the bike corner here. So right when I pass the cone in the next slide, you'll see how things start to change as I do the corner. All right, so here I've gotten in front of the cone and you can see that my body is pretty neutral with the bike, but what I'm starting to do here, right at this point, I know I need to turn and I need to go the other way, right? So if I don't put any input, and I was riding with my buddy and a few times I could see his tracks kind of coming out of the rut sometimes, and then we talked about using this, and then I never saw him really come out of the corners again. And this is huge. And if you are binding your brakes, you're never going to notice this body input that you're doing. So this is why in all these videos where I'm talking about learning how to do corners without your brakes, you start to learn how to make the bike turn. And yes, there's also pressure with my outside foot, but there is some manipulation with the hands that are being done here. Right at this point, this is where I'm starting to use that, where the two last fingers on my inside hand are, that area of my palm, I'm pushing downward on the handlebar. So I'm pushing it almost downward and towards the ground. So it's helping me get lean. I'm not pulling inward like later I'm going to be doing in the sand corner to make a tighter turning radius. This is how to get more lean out of your bike with your hands. Later we'll talk about making a tighter turning radius with your inside hand. Okay, so here is the point where you can see my body is shifted upright, but that's just not me pulling my body upright. What that is that is conscious input on the inside handlebar to get more lean out of the bike. I'm not sitting up trying to counterbalance the bike here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push that bike towards the ground. And you can see how my lean angle has increased from the previous picture. And the way I'm increasing the lean angle is two things: knee pressure on the shroud, but the majority of it is actually my inside hand putting that little bit of pressure downwards towards the ground. And you'd be amazed at how you can make a 230-pound motorcycle lean over with just the pressure of your ring finger and your pinky finger and right below that with your palm. Okay, and then you can see here, I'm starting to get that tilt where I am counterbalancing with the bike, but it is not a counterbalance, and that's what I see a lot of people make the mistake of doing is they shift their body upright. Well, when you shift your body upright like this, but without pressure inward on that palm, you're going to ride out of the corner. And this is why 99% of people, they try to counterbalance like this in a corner, and then they stand the bike up and they go out of the corner. You have to have that downward pressure on the handlebars, and that pressure on the handlebars is leaning the bike over, and that's what's allowing me to counterbalance at this point. I've already hit the deepest part of the rut. Now I'm starting to come out of the rut, and I'm angling inward with lean, and that lean is created by the pressure on the inside handlebar. Okay, and then here I'm just exiting the corner like normal, and you can see I made it through the corner, did not ride out, had a decent lean. It looked like I was counterbalancing, but when you counterbalance, that's just because the bike is leaning with pressure from my hand. It's not me throwing my head upright and counterbalancing against the bike. You got to be doing conscious pressure of the handlebars down to make that bike turn. Here I'm going to exit and just head into the next corner. Okay, so here is the next corner. This one's a tighter one, so that I'm still doing the same input to get that lean. I'm coming in here, and you can see my body's pretty squared up with the bike. I haven't started to put any pressure, and when you watch this in real time, you can't even catch the really quick pressure that I put inward on that bar to get that bike to lean. But it's very subtle, and that's what gets it to lean, and that's what will keep you from riding over this rut. Because sometimes if you're not putting conscious pressure with your leg and with your hands in the corner, it's really hard to be consistent every single lap you go through the corner. It's very subtle, but you can see it. There's pressure with my right hand, and now I'm exiting the corner, and I'm going to just try to come out of the corner smooth and accelerate down the straightaway. But you'll find when you start putting pressure on the bars like this, you'll be way more consistent, and you're probably subconsciously doing it already, but then sometimes you're not, and that's why you have the corner mistakes consistently when you're doing stuff like this. Like this is just a turn track. All right, so here's the sand corner, and in the sand corner, I kind of have to initiate with a lot of lean coming in. So at this point, I am also doing another thing in this corner. So when I come in, yes, I'm putting the downward pressure with my knee and the inside of the handlebar, but when I get halfway through, this corner started to get a little bit of a V. You can't tell much in the picture, but you can tell by looking at my front end. So in the first picture, my front end's straight, so right now is just downward pressure on the handlebar. And that's what's helping me get that lean. My knee and the downward pressure is getting that initial lean coming into the bars. I'm not using any brake, and I'm not using any clutch at this point. I'm off the brakes, off the clutch, and just using body manipulation to make the bike turn. All right, so pick two. This is where you can see stuff start to happen. So this is where I have the lean. I have great lean coming in, but then now what I'm doing is I am pulling inward with my pinky and ring finger. Right below that, I'm pulling inward on the handlebars, and this is what's helping me make a tighter turn radius. So you can see, and I showed this in one of my previous videos, you can see those lines of people riding out of the corner. And what that is they got lean, but they're not able to make a tighter turning radius. So what you see is people come to a stop at this point in the corner because they have to grab their brakes to navigate through the corner, and then now they're killing their roll speed. So here, what I'm doing is I'm pulling in towards my thigh just slightly, not a lot. If you pull in a lot, you're going to crash. But it's just a slight pressure and pull towards me to get the radius of that turn to be tighter. Okay, and so this final pick, you can see I got the radius of the turn tighter. I stayed in the berm, and then you can see I kind of released that pressure. Still got a little bit of pressure downward to keep the lean, but now I'm exiting the corner, and I made it through. So this is huge. If you guys can work on this and try to master the pressure of the handlebars and how to put them, and that's why practice makes perfect, and sometimes always going to a track and racing around and doing the same thing over and over again, you're never going to get any better. So that's why it's really important to kind of break it down and do it in a smaller area where you're out there and you can just try to find ways to manipulate the bike yourself and perfect your corners.